Precision airstrike, take cover!
Royal Pegasus Knights, the pride of Bretonnia. Don't see them nearly as often as you should, in my opinion, but here Stormrunners brought them in Bordello with Albric, even up in the air, up against the Heralds of Ariel, Sisters of Twilight, so nice sub-faction battle, love to see that. Yeah, Royal Pegasus Knights, insanely strong, but a little bit glass cannon, we'll go back to that in just a minute. We've got some Peasant Bowmen, Knights of the Fleur-de-Lis, Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis rather, defending the backline, Spearmen at Arms, and some mobs. Up against the Sisters of Twilight, we've got Ariel, we've got Lost Sylvan Knights, Race of the Frozen Hearts, some Dryads, Hagbane Tips, and Unit of Treekin here in the center. More importantly, does Ariel have Tempest? No, she does not. She does have Soul Stealer, though, which is definitely going to be very dangerous to the Royal Pegasus Knights. Obviously, Tempest is as well. In any matchup where your opponent can take Tempest, you got to be very aware of that. It's risky to take these guys, but what do you get in return? Well, they're Flying Grail Knights, basically. Perfect Vigor, anti-large bonus, massive weapon strength, and charge. 20 bonus versus large as well on 61 weapon strength. 70 charge currently, as they're being buffed by Albric's Tempest thing. They got magic attacks, 43 attack, only 31 defense and 80 armor. Does make them pretty squishy. They've got quite a bit HP per model, but only 4,600 HP overall is pretty low. You can see Ariel pushing through the center there with the Treekin as the sisters immediately get caught up in this gaggle of Royal Pegasus Knights. This is a really, really bad situation for them. They're immediately going to try and dive on these peasants here, which is definitely the right call. You know, jump on the ground here where you can potentially get some support. You see the Lost Sylvan Knights here countercharging in. Now, obviously, Royal Pegasus Knights will absolutely wreck the Lost Sylvan Knights with their magic damage if they get the charge on them. Likewise, Lost Sylvan Knights with their magic damage, super high charge and great armor piercing, will also wreck the Royal Pegasus Knights if they get a counter charge on them. So, very wisely avoiding the engagement there. Stormrunner sweeps over. He's going to get on these Hawk Riders here. Immediately they die, although they do also try to go to ground. It just does not work for them, unfortunately. The backline is being made a mess of, though. At this point, the defenders are trying to defend. Ariel there with the Treekin, though, is probably going to be way more than what they can handle. But Lost Sylvan Knights also doing their best to try and clean some things up, but now, unfortunately, have made themselves a little bit exposed. They seem to sense that. They're going to charge back towards the center, try and get away from those peasant archers, but here come the Pegasus Knights, the engagement we've all been waiting for. I actually have not seen this engagement straight up yet. I would imagine, man, the Sisters of Twilight just doing a horrendous amount of friendly fire with that shot right there. Really not setting Lost Sylvan Knights up for success, but they do get the Berry Wine there, also keeps their Vigor, so the perfect Vigor of the Royal Pegasus Knights won't matter so much. I mean, it's been a relatively short battle anyway, so it might not come into play much here. But they are getting the extra anti-large, of course, from Albric as well. I guess some of their anti-large does come from that, but they're definitely taking losses, but certainly inflicting more damage. And yeah, the Sisters of Twilight just straight up get gooned by Albric, and the Lost Sylvan Knights shatter. So a pretty decisive engagement for Bretonnia. Now the Pegasus Knights can get back up in the air, sweep around, try and take out some of these other units. The Hagbane Tips do have magic damage, right? Not armor piercing, but still do a decent amount versus the Royal Pegasus Knights. They do have pretty large hitboxes as well, all things considered. The Pegasus wings makes them relatively easy to hit, I believe. I would need to do some testing on that, but anyway. Yeah, Bretonnia trying to clean up. Ariel might be able to come back in this. She's definitely got Soul Stealer there, which she did use in that engagement. That also helped contribute some of the damage. But at this point, the Royal Pegasus Knights just using their mobility. They are insanely fast, right? Even 80 speed after poison is pretty ridiculous. They can get in here and just wreck all these isolated units, right? One by one. So hopefully the Bretonnian ground forces will be able to hold. We do have Hamsel of Hamsel. Yeah, the Hamsel. The Hamsel and the Damsel, Heavens and Life, or maybe Lamsel. Yeah, we'll go with that. Charging around here, still active and supporting. Defenders defending, but we're here for the Pegasus Knights. They're such a cool unit, man. One of the coolest looking units in the game. Shame you don't see them more often. One of the reasons why is because they are definitely squishy and expensive, and as a result can kind of get dumped on in many situations, but you can use them appropriately. They're extremely powerful. One of the most powerful units in the game. Absolutely devastating charge. Although it should be noted, their charge against single entities and monstrous infantry doesn't really function correctly, as we'll see in just a minute. Right now, just doing exactly what they should, cleaning up various isolated wood elf units, allowing the mobs to kind of chase them around. Here we've got this full health Eternal Guard with shields, so I mean surely charging into the front of braced spear infantry, but in fact they do not get braced in time. Damsel rear charge probably would have broken the bracing bonus anyway. And successive charges immediately within seconds, 50% HP down, and they are out of there. Yeah, a little bit of a shorter battle today, but that's okay. We still got some time left, and I do want you to see this charge on Ariel here, which is incoming. Spoiler alert, Pegasus Knights are going to charge Ariel, which, considering she has physical resistance, is a large, unarmored single entity. You would think a pretty ideal scenario for the Royal Pegasus Knights, but we'll watch for that. Definitely Royal Pegasus Knights charge is great, as we've seen against multi-model units. Definitely functions correctly against infantry and cavalry. But we'll keep it over here. Looks like the Dryads are up next on the list. Dryads do have a bit of physical resistance. Magic damage does help somewhat here. And this time I'll keep it in a wide view. You can see the health bar. And the first charge, pretty good. And then the second charge especially, nice and clean. And just wrecked. Especially after they do like a couple more attack animations with their charge bonus still active. The way that you can kind of isolate and nuke units with these flying cavalry from Bretonnia is pretty amazing. Really means if you have good micro and you're on top, if your opponent's making any mistakes at all, you can punish them very heavily for it. Brace the Frozen Heart with the Frostbite here could help slow these guys down, along with the poison. If they had both, could potentially lock them in place, but haven't been able to get both going at the same time. And here's the charge on Ariel. Again, I'll keep the health bars up because keep in mind they are targeting here. Her directly, rather. You can see not a whole lot of damage. These Pegasus Knights also, they kind of like miss, swing out way wide, and then try and turn back around. End up not even really engaging on their actual target. But nice wave from Albric. Actually breaks both of these Dryads. Did a ton of damage there as well. Treekin, leadership might be low enough from that to actually rout here straight up. And Ariel, no longer unbreakable, does rout as well. Actually did end up taking a pretty decent amount of damage in sustained combat, but at least the charge animation is not great on single entities. Monstrous infantry, from my experience, also can be similar, but both these Pegasus Knights, just insane value. And granted, they had very much ideal targets to go after, right? Lost Sylvan Knights just getting absolutely owned there, along with Ariel, or sorry, Sisters of Twilight. I'd definitely say if you're taking Wood Elves against Bretonnia and you've got Ariel, I mean, she has Tempest, right? I'll have to double check that, but regardless, you want Tempest against Bretonnia. Like, you almost need Tempest against Bretonnia. In fact, if you do go Tempest against Bretonnia and with the air heavy build, that's one of the ways that's easier to cheese the Bretonnia matchup for Wood Elves. But yeah, Albric also 104 kills, great value on him. Peasant Bowmen contributing somewhat to the battle. The rest of the men-at-arms and peasants just get run over, as you'd expect. A lot of those kills go to the Race of the Frozen Heart, who, with 238 kills, still just barely pay for themselves. I guess maybe not. Maybe their price increased. I'd have to double-check that, but overall pretty rough. I mean, the archers do okay, but yeah, the Dryads generally do okay. Clean up a lot of the peasant infantry, but it's definitely a tough one for the Wood Elves. Royal Pegasus Knights, though, I mean, you don't see them super often. They are one of the coolest units in the game, but in terms of matchups, and just kind of thinking through like what matchups you would want to use them in. Beastmen is one that Beastmen don't have much of an air force whatsoever to challenge you in the air, so you can very much kind of dictate. They do have mobile units that can pin you to the ground, but at the same time, you know, with that kind of nuke strategy, that multi-charge terror, especially with terror, I should say, strategy of just nuking units from multiple directions. Pegasus Knights are very good at that, and Beastmen's low leadership means they are pretty susceptible to that. They're also squishy, relatively speaking, so I would say Royal Pegasus Knights probably pretty good in this matchup. They don't have any Tempest or anything either to threaten there. Yeah, Dark Elves is another pretty decent one. You do have to be careful of blobbing up for Soul Stealer, though. Soul Stealer is a big danger here, but if you can keep the Royal Pegasus Knights healed and sustained, I mean, they don't have any Tempest. Also are the only elves without any healing, and that high shock damage and magic damage too, both very useful. Have a lot of physical resistance units, so yeah, again, the high shock damage does a lot of damage to low HP of the elves, and Dark Elves are the most susceptible to that, given their lack of healing. Dwarfs, definitely not. Empire is an interesting one, maybe, in this matchup, especially if you're trying to like challenge Karl Franz in the air. A lot of the time, you just see the double Paladins, because Paladins are obviously very good right now, and they kind of give you like a Royal Pegasus Knight. Not quite, but something similar for a much cheaper package, even cheaper than the Pegasus Knights themselves, although with Guardian that, even still, a little bit cheaper. But anyway, if you do want to contest the air heavily against the Empire, you can. They are a little bit vulnerable to cannon fire, given that cannons will do a lot of damage to their unit models, and can I think even maybe one-shot their unit models, but on a rear charge on something like Demigryph Knights, they will do a lot of damage. It's an interesting trade with Demis. They don't all, it's kind of like with the Stag Knights, it really depends on who gets the good engagement there, but the flying does potentially allow you to dictate that. So Empire is another kind of maybe. Greenskins, I don't know, they're a little bit squishy. You might think that high charge magic damage can be good, and, sort of mobility, and it can be, definitely, but they are a little bit squishy, and Greenskins also tend to have really good mass on their infantry, the Orc infantry at least, so they can be a little bit tricky to operate against Greenskins. High Elves and Wood Elves both, it's very risky. They can be very effective, and I would say especially against the Wood Elves, given that they rely very heavily on physical resistance, and yeah, just in general susceptible to that high charge as well. Generally low armor, low melee defense, low health. But they have Tempest now, and I was going to say, I believe Alariel obviously has Tempest, and Ariel does too. So, for both of these factions, it's dangerous. They can be good, but it's, do it at your own risk. Same thing with the Lizardman. Lizardman High Salon's not a super common pick in this matchup. Is vulnerable to some other tools, so maybe you could potentially play around that in the Lizardman matchup, but again, lack of AP means they're not, and the charging single entities too means they're not great against Lizardmen. Saurus, again, very heavy mass as well, so it's just not the best. Norska actually is an interesting one as well, given that they can dictate with the mobility, and again, Norska also light for the most part. Mammoths are possibly big enough that the Royal Pegasus Knights can actually connect on their charge pretty well. I don't know, I haven't tested it in a while. But yeah, generally Norska, squishiness is good for the Royal Pegasus Knights. Again, also no strong flying tools, no Tempest. I mean, they do have some interesting flying units, but they will die horribly to Royal Pegasus Knights. So Norska is another one potentially. Skaven can lock you down and shoot you, but they literally have no air units, so it depends. It can work in this matchup, but again, a little bit risky. Tomb Kings is an interesting one. Bone Giants are just so oppressive against Pegasus Knights. Like, one shot can kill, like, more than half the unit if it hits through the side of the unit. So, maybe a little bit risky here as well, but they don't necessarily have any direct lockdown or damage tools in the air, and, their only flying units are pretty poor. Coast, again, armor-piercing missiles are a consideration here, definitely. Deal with them. They can help deal with Harkon, although keep in mind Harkon can choose to take this magic resist item, or ability rather, that will make him significantly tankier against the Royal Pegasus Knights, but I don't know. Again, relatively squishy here. The armor-piercing missiles are dangerous. It's a maybe in this matchup. Vampire counts do have their own version of Tempest and can also field a pretty strong air force, so if you're feeling lucky and you want to bet against that, you can take them here, but again, a little bit risky. Yeah, Warriors of Chaos, their armor generally means that the Royal Pegasus Knights aren't as good. I would say the Hippogriffs are probably better here specifically because Warriors of Chaos have quite a bit of armor, and even on their monsters, like, Dagos got, what, 70 armor, I want to say, which is not a ton, but it's something. And yeah, they don't have any really unarmored large units besides Spawn, and your archers can deal with them just fine. What else we talked about? So yeah, that's pretty much all the matchups. Royal Pegasus Knights, you should really see them more often, especially against, like, Norska, Beastmen. Skaven's a fun one. It's, again, risky, but maybe Empire as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What matchups do you foresee Royal Pegasus Knights being good in? The mass changes for infantry have set them back somewhat, but at the same time, it's also made flying cavalry even that much more valuable because you can bypass those infantry lines. But let me know what you guys' thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.